Hi everyone, Kinsey Schofield here. Welcome to Fox 10 News. Now we're going to jump right into our Fox 10 Facebook update to give you today's latest headlines.
I'm John Hook with your Fox 10 Facebook News Update. A chaotic scene outside a QT near 19th Avenue in Southern where a dog was attacking customers. According to Phoenix police, an officer responded and tried to subdue the dog. When he was unable to restrain the dog, the officer fired 2 shots, one striking a customer in the foot, the other hit the dog and the dog died. The customer, who was being attacked when the officer fired, is recovering from the gunshot wound and from dog bites. A U.S. airman who helped stop a terror attack on a train in France is stabbed during a bar fight. That fight caught on surveillance video. Airman Spencer Stone stabbed in the upper body. He will survive. Police are looking for the suspects. A Chandler family forced to jump from a second-story window to escape a house fire. It happened near McQueen and Fry. Firefighters say the father woke up, got everybody out of the house to safety. The cause of that fire under investigation tonight. Representative Kevin McCarthy drops out of the race for U.S. House Speaker. The California Republican pulled out of the running today. Congressman Daniel Webster of Florida and Jason Chaffetz of Utah are now considered front-runners for the job. Take a look at the 10-day forecast. Temperatures climbing back into the high 90s for the weekend. That's your Fox 10 Facebook News Update. I'm John Hook.
Thanks so much, John Hook, and I'm not ready for it to be 90 degrees again. Let's be honest. Oh, wow. I am looking up pictures of, I actually just tweeted this. I should have just used the picture that I tweeted the other day of the People magazine cover with Donald Trump. This People magazine cover is what Donald Trump was complaining about when the woman jumped on the stage and was yelling how much she loved him. It's amazing. You're going to see it here in a minute. I'm tweeting this out right now, so any of my friends that don't know we're streaming live right now can catch it. And let's see here. Let me also get my lower third ready. Here we go.
You won't hear this on the media, but Donald gave, have you, Donald gave $20 million to the St. Jude Children's Home. $20 million. He could have used that $20 million for television ads, but he decided to give to children with cancer. So that's Donald Trump. By the way, Donald hired more Hispanics, hundreds of thousands of them, and they all love him. Believe me. Donald, take over.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. What a great group. You know, they have hundreds and hundreds of people standing outside. They can't get in. They didn't get the good real estate. You got the good real estate. I feel badly. I feel badly. So Phil Ruffin, you know, Phil owns this hotel. And he's been a friend of mine, and we did deals together. We had a great success at Trump International Hotel together. I hope you all know that hotel. Most beautiful building in Las Vegas, I have to say. But it's a great thing to be involved with somebody that is so talented, so smart, such a great business person as Phil Ruffin, believe me. And he's a great poker player. You know, I always put my money on him in a game of poker, and he just walks away very quietly, just takes everybody's money and goes on to the next one, right? That's what we want. So I wanted just to thank you. I love you, too. I love you, too. I want to just start by saying, you know, Kevin McCarthy is out. You know that, right? And they're giving me a lot of credit for that because I said you really need somebody very, very tough and very smart. You know, smart goes with tough, not just tough. I know tough people, they're not smart. That's the worst, okay? That's the worst. You got to be smart. But we need smart, we need tough, we need the whole package. And it's a positive, you know, like me, thank you. I like that. I like this guy over here, whoever he is. But it's bedlam in Washington right now. Bedlam. It's a mess. I've never seen anything like it. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. I've always been in politics. People said, well, he's, you know, for 3 months I've been a politician, though. Can you believe it? It's so embarrassing. I'm a politician. I never wanted to be a politician. But at some point, I said, we're going to make our country great again. I mean, we're going to do it. So, had to do it. But Kevin is a nice guy, and I just hope now that they find somebody that's going to be, you know, have those qualities where we can negotiate, where we can use that debt ceiling that's coming up very rapidly and do something really, really significant. Because if we don't, we're going to be in very big trouble. We're going to be in very, very big trouble. We're in a big, fat, beautiful bubble right now, and you watch, and I predicted the last couple, and I'm telling you, we've got to get our act together or we're going to be Greece on steroids. That's what's going to happen. No, that's what's going to happen. And there's nothing wrong with the Republicans taking a tough stance and sticking with it. You know, I wrote The Art of the Deal. And The Art of the Deal is, I think, the biggest selling business book of all time. Yeah, look, it's all over the place. Who doesn't have The Art of the Deal? By the way, I'm coming out with a new one about 3 weeks. You know what it's called? Crippled America. Can you believe? What a difference. What a difference in... One's The Art of the Deal, everything rosy, let's go, make money, everybody good. And that was a long time ago. Now I'm doing one called Crippled America, and as much as I hate to call it that, we had all these titles, and it sort of happened by mistake. We had a photographer. It's a great book publishing company, Simon & Schuster, the best, Rolls-Royce. Or Cadillac? Maybe I should say Cadillac, right? Cadillac? We want to keep it here. We want to keep it here. But you know, the really great company, and they sent this fantastic photographer, very talented guy, and he took pictures. And I'm smiling. You know, like life is a bowl of cherries, like we're doing great. In the meantime, China's taking our jobs. We're losing to ISIS. Russia's dictating to. We don't know what we're doing, right? I mean, is it true? So I have all these pictures, smiling, but I had a couple where I guess I wasn't prepared, and I was nasty looking, nasty. And then I said, maybe we should use that picture instead of the nice pictures. I'm not going to give it to my family or anything, but maybe we should use. So I have the nastiest looking picture, like, because honestly, for a period of time, that's what we've got to do. We've got to put our head down, and we've got to straighten out this mess. And nobody can do it like me. Nobody. Nobody can do it like me. Honestly. I will bring our jobs back. You know, it's very interesting. CNN did a good poll. And I'm on live with CNN. Look at all those cameras up there. We're all live. You know, every time they have me on live, all these other guys, they make the same speech over and over and over. They read it. Just, nobody... If I say the same thought twice, I get criticized. You said that 3 weeks ago. I mean, how many thoughts can you have? Jobs stink. The military's in trouble. The vets are being taken poorly care of. And we're going to straighten it out. We're going to repeal Obamacare. You know, have to. We have to. We have to. We don't have a choice. You know, it's interesting. Look at the response that gets. And sometimes it's not the biggest response. I mean, my stance on immigration is, first of all, I just met with a whole group, the Hispanics. My relation, and what Phil said, I really appreciate. I didn't know he was going to say that. But I've employed thousands and thousands, and currently thousands of Hispanics. These are incredible people. Incredible. My relationship is great. They did a poll, and everybody probably saw the poll. I won with Hispanics in the state of Nevada. You know, they're incredible people. And I think I won for two reasons, but one of them is they know I'm going to bring jobs back to this country. We're going to take our jobs back, and people are going to have jobs. Because this 5.3 and 5.5%, it is nonsense. We have close to 100 million people that are out of the workforce. They're out of the workforce. We have 50 million people that are in poverty. They consider it poverty, like third world, and not even as good as some of the third world nations. Our infrastructure, our airports, are worse than third world nations. You fly into LaGuardia, you fly into Kennedy, LAX, you fly into some of these airports, we're like a third world country. And I go and I deal with these people. I get along with everybody, okay? By the way, I do. But I deal. And I don't dislike China. I love China. In fact, they're my tenants in New York. I have the biggest bank in the world as my tenant, Chinese bank, like seriously big. The rent comes in, boom, like clockwork, okay? I don't have to worry. But I have tremendous relationships with Mexico, with China, with everybody. The problem is we're not being led right. When China, Japan, Brazil, I mean, any country, name a country, anybody, name any country, they're taking advantage of us. Any country, France, they're taking advantage of us. You know that because you know what they're doing with Iran. You see, she says France. You could name any country. Russia, oh, that's a pretty easy one. Russia. That was the one I was hoping we don't have to say too much about Russia. Oh, he's having a field day dealing with our leaders because our leaders are incompetent. They're incompetent. They're incompetent. So we've had an amazing, well, even Israel, if you look at Israel, we're actually taking advantage of Israel, if you think about it. Because what we did with that stupid deal with Iran is the worst thing that has probably happened to Israel since the initial Israel, since day one. I would say maybe, potentially the worst thing that's ever happened to Israel. And I have so many Jewish friends where they go, I don't know what happened to Obama. They supported him. And they say, I don't know what happened. And some continue to support him. It's almost like, what are we doing here? They support him. They're having fundraisers for him. But they say, yeah, he's treated us very badly. And then he walks into the room, they give him money. The whole thing is crazy. He has been so bad to Israel. And Bibi is a great guy. I know him. I think, and I thought he made a great speech the other day in the United Nations. You know, I was one of the few people, I think the only, but he asked me to make an ad for him for his campaign. So I was greatly honored. I made an ad. He won. I was happy. I took full credit for it, okay? Full credit. Full credit. But, you know, we have a problem with so many different things, and we'll talk about, I love talking about this, the media. Do we all love the media? Do we love the media? Oh. No, the level of dishonesty is incredible. It's incredible. And, you know, I always have to preface, I'll give a quickie, not all of them, because some are fine, but let's end it with that, okay? Some are fine. But the level of honesty in the media, they're so dishonest. You know, I do a crowd, and I'll have like a crowd like this, and like the cameras, they never pan the room. They never, ever pan the room. Look, they never pan the room. No, it's true. They don't do it. They don't do it. Pan the room. Go ahead, pan it. But you know, they won't. They won't pan it. I was in Oklahoma the other day. Unbelievable. We had 20,000 people. It's a band shell in this massive park. And there were more than 20,000. I'm saying 20. I'm now going low because if I have two people more, they say, oh, it wasn't. I mean, I had one crowd where a group from Politico, which is totally dishonest, these people, very liberal, totally Politico, they cut numbers down. But Bernie Sanders, and then you look, and I have far more people than him. But, you know, it's important because it shows the dishonesty. But I was in Oklahoma the other day, and we had 20,000 people, at least. We had a band shell that was 5 times the size of this thing. They had a thing in the back, all concrete, you know, a real beautiful band shell, all concrete. You can't see anything. We must have 2,000 to 3,000 people behind the band shell. I was saying they can't see anything because it's a stage with this massive wall behind me. But they couldn't fit them into a park. So we had much more than 20, but I say 20. I've actually become very conservative because this way I don't get criticized. And I said to the press, I went home. My wife said, oh, how was it? She watched it on television. She said, was the crowd big? I said, what do you mean? It's true. Because she said they had the camera on your face the entire time. They never panned the crowd. They never. No, they're terrible. They're terrible. So, no, they're terrible. The media is terrible. I'm going to go into a whole thing. But, no, they're terrible. Pan. Look, they won't turn the camera, see? They won't turn it. And they won't put this part on because they never put it on because, but why don't you pan the cameras? They don't want to do that. Terrible. Terrible. They don't do it. Look, they don't move. But my wife tells me, she said, so how was the crowd in Oklahoma? I said, it was amazing. I said, but I thought you watched. Yeah, I did, but they never showed how many people were there. And then the reporter got up. Donald Trump was here. He made a speech in Oklahoma. And left. I set every record. He was here. He made a speech. Yeah, he's a little controversial. He's a little controversial. They don't say it. They're really dishonest people. Same thing in Dallas. I went to Dallas, and they treated me fairly good there. But we had a full place, plus the floor was full. And Mark Cuban called me up, who's a good guy, and he said, and he owns the Mavericks, and he said, I'd love you to use the place. I said, when? Wednesday. I said, what's today? It was like Thursday when he called. I said, how many seats? He said, we have 20,000 seats. But then we have 20,000 plus the floor. So we have the floor filled up. We have the place in a few days. After the first day, I think they sold either 12 or 15 or something like that thousand the first day. And it was a holiday. And I got there. It was incredible. But they don't really want to. They want to belittle. I'll tell you a great story. So today, in one of the big newspapers, New York Times, we've never done better. We're hotter than ever. We just had a poll. The Morning Consult came out. I think we're either 32 or 35%. That's massive. Remember this. Remember this. Well, the Times, it's disgusting. And the reporter that did the story, who's done other stories that are totally inaccurate, calls up my people, said, oh, I want to meet with Mr. Trump. I want to meet. Never even called me. Never even spoke to me. Never even spoke to me. So they did a story. Is he waning? Now, I just won. Listen to this. So yesterday morning, before the story was, I won the state of Florida. I was at 28 or 29. Now, think of this. The governor of the state, Bush, former, no, hey, honestly, and Rubio, the senator. Well, Rubio was the Gang of Eight. That was the one that everybody come in, don't worry about it. Immigration, very weak on immigration. And Bush weak on immigration. Bush is in favor of Common Core, okay? So that means your children, right? That means your children are going to be educated by the bureaucrats in Washington. I don't think so. I don't think so. So this reporter calls up my people. I have great people. Calls up Hope. Oh, I'd love to speak to Mr. Trump. Okay, we'll work it out. I'd love to speak to him. When can we speak? We'll work it out. So they would say, she writes this horrible story. And she said, she didn't say that we had 24 million people at the debate, the biggest audience in the history of CNN. Then Fox had the biggest audience in cable, I think they said, right? Right? And by the way, it got bigger. That was the original, it's called preliminary numbers. I know so much from The Apprentice. Oh, was I the greatest of all ratings? Was I the greatest? I have a big chunk of The Apprentice. I get a lot of the profits from The Apprentice. So, and you can always tell the enemies. I left. The head of Comcast, who's an amazing guy, Steve Burke, he came up to see me, along with the head of reality television for NBC, Paul Telegney. And they come up to my office. This is like 6-7 months ago. And they said, we want you to extend. We want you. We'll do anything. We want you to extend. Steve Burke doesn't do that. He's one of the biggest executives. Comcast owns NBC. And he's fantastic. So I said, Steve, honestly, I think I'm going to run. I want to make our country great again. I think we're going to run. I think. And he said, well, I don't know, but just in case. So they have their upfronts. That's a big deal. Usually at the biggest place in Manhattan, it's a big deal. And they announce their fall schedule. So they announce that The Apprentice is going to be extended with Donald Trump. So I've done 14 seasons. It's going to be season 15, and they even want to go beyond that. I say, but I told you I'm probably going to run. You can't do that because if you run, they have stupid laws. It's called equal time. So that if I do The Apprentice, as an example, you have to let other people, like let's say Lindsey Graham, do a 2-hour show on television. I don't think so, right? So you have equal time. So basically you're precluded. Essentially, you're precluded from it. So what happened is I said, no. Well, we're going to take a chance because we're. So they announce it. They sell all the advertising. It's one of the easiest shows on television to sell. Big success, even after all these years. 12 years, 15 copies. Think of it. And now they extend. And I'm honored. And I get a call from Mark Burnett. He said, I can't believe it. You're turning down an extension. Nobody turns down an extension. I turned down an extension. I'm giving up a lot, believe me, to do this. I'm giving up a lot. And I'm on top of it, I'm self-funding my own campaign. I'm putting up my own money. I'm the only one. So it's amazing, the response. I mean, people love that. You know, because all these guys are totally controlled by the special interests and the lobbyists. Believe me. I've been there. I was the one that used to give all the money. Now, all of a sudden, I went like this. So with The Apprentice, so I turn it down, and we get a story from a very dishonest paper. Donald Trump gets fired from NBC, by NBC. Now, think of it. Now, they know it's not true. And in fact, I get a big chunk of the show. You know, I created it with Mark Burnett. And so they fired. And they said, Trump gets fired by NBC. And they know it's not true. So they call up. They say, yeah, we knew, but it just sounds better. It plays better, does it? Oh, great. They're such dirty, rotten liars. It's disgusting. So I gave up The Apprentice. And then I said, you know, we had to put down in filing certified numbers. And they said, oh, well, maybe Trump won't run because that's a big thing. So he'll never announce. So I announced. Then they say he'll never do Form A. Form A is like where you sign your life away. Phil would never do it. He would never do it. Too smart. You would never do this, Phil, believe me. You should. That's the kind of guy we need, but he's not going to do it. He's happy. Got a great family, got a great hotel, got lots of great things. But so they'll say he'll never file Form A. I file Form A. Then they say, oh, but he'll never file his financials because maybe he's not as rich as people think, okay? So I filed. By the way, I was one of the few that filed in time, and I had almost 100 pages. These guys have one page. You know, I worked for some company. No, it's true. And they were late. They needed extensions, and I filed on time. I wanted to file on time. I actually filed ahead of schedule. You were entitled to 2 45-day extensions automatically. And I just filed. And they found out that my company, and Phil would know because he knows my company, is much bigger, much stronger, much better, much richer than they ever thought possible. They couldn't believe it. So that's gone now. So what I did is I did this filing. And from the day I've done this, and my wife said to me, it's very interesting, and Ivanka. Has anyone ever heard of Ivanka? Yes? Right? And Melania. They're two great women. And you watch, they're going to come out, they're going to start campaigning pretty soon, and they're going to be great. And they believe so much and so strongly the women's health issues that Bush, by the way, didn't want. I saw that. He didn't want to fund them. And Hillary, you know, puts on the phone, oh, how dare he talk about this. She said, she acted indignant. Can you imagine? Here's a woman cheating the United States government for years with her emails. I mean, they gave Petraeus a criminal record. He's got a criminal record now. They destroyed 5 other people for doing about 1/10 of what she did. And I don't know. I think she's going to get away with it. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? No, I think she's going to get away with it. They destroyed Petraeus, General Petraeus, good guy. They destroyed his life. What he did is 2% of what she did. So you tell me it's fair. But I look forward to running against her because, frankly, that is going to be such a big issue. Believe me. It's going to be such a big issue. And don't forget, I mean, she will fight very hard because she has to win. Because the statute of limitations is 6 years. Do you know what that means? No, do you know what that means? There's some guy up there, he's probably a lawyer, he's laughing like hell. No, I mean, if a Republican gets in, it's got to be fair. But if a Republican gets in, they're going to have to look at that. 6 years. So she's fighting for her life. And I think the Democrats are going to leave her alone because it's a corrupt system. I mean, we have a corrupt system. And I think they're going to leave her alone. But if a Republican gets in, I don't say that she's guilty. They have to check. But if a Republican gets in, we have a 6-year statute of limitations. And I guarantee at least there'll be a fair investigation. They're going to look. So she's really fighting. So she's really fighting for her life, in a sense. And she's gotten, it's very interesting, in the same day, she said, I don't like Donald Trump's tone. His tone. I don't like his tone. And Bush said the same thing. And Rubio said it, too. They said, I don't like Donald Trump's tone. And I say, wait a minute. We need a tough tone, don't we? Isn't it tired? Aren't we tired? We're tired of these weak, pathetic, sad people that don't have a clue, that won't do anything. We are going to make the country better than it's ever been before. We have a chance to do that. So they said, we don't like Mr. Trump's tone. They want to be low-key. Let's fall asleep. And China, you ever see China's tone? They walk through the door. Believe me, I deal with them. They don't talk about, oh, isn't it a beautiful day, Mr. Trump? The weather's beautiful. The sky is so beautiful. Look, Mr. Trump, outside it. It's all business. We want to extend lease. Right? There's no games, right? There's no games. There's no small talk. There's no small talk. There's no, how's the weather outside? Oh, it's raining. Oh, isn't that too bad? I'll have to call my wife. It's all business with these people. And they hit you in waves. You know, when I deal with China, and I love China. I love the people. They're great. I love the Mexican people. They're great. But I deal with China, and they walk in with waves of people, smart people. I have so many. He says, build the wall. We'll build the wall. Don't worry. And Mexico's going to pay. Don't worry. We'll build the wall. But no, I want people in, but they have to come in legally. We know that. Okay. But I will tell you, China, they come in and they negotiate, and you're sitting there by yourself, and you got like 25 people across the table. And every one of them's a genius. But if you're good, you can take it. You can do deals that are unbelievable. So I asked my people last week, I said, go back and tell me, what is the trade imbalance with China? And I was surprised, because it was so, I thought it was big, but I didn't know it was this big. It's almost $400 billion a year. Think of it. Essentially, that means we're losing $400 billion. Now, it's worse than that, because they've devalued their currency, so they're taking our jobs, they're taking our base, they're taking our manufacturing, and then, on top of it, we owe them, think of this one. You know, China is our largest creditor along with Japan. They're actually exactly the same. We owe each of them $1.5 trillion. So they steal our jobs. They take our money. We owe them money. How do you figure that one? Not too good, right? All these geniuses in the front. Not too good. I call it a magic act. It's incredible. They take our money and we owe them money. It never ends. But we owe them $1.5 trillion. We owe total $19 trillion. We owe Japan $1.5 trillion. Then I said, so I was in Los Angeles 3 weeks ago. I saw the biggest ships I've ever seen, the biggest. And cars are pouring out of these ships. They're from Japan, like the Long Island Expressway. I never saw cars go so fast. They're going like 50 miles an hour off a ramp. Shung, shung, shung. It's almost like the ramp. I don't know if you saw it last week. It was a picture in one of the papers. The ramp they built, they have a wall that's this big, great wall, between the borders. Okay, they have a wall. And they built a ramp. Rather than tear down the wall was so small they didn't have to bother tearing it down. They built a ramp, and they have trucks going back and forth over the ramp. Nobody's doing anything. I mean, how stupid are we? How stupid. But China, so we have a imbalance with them, almost $400 billion a year. Now, if that's the number, you know it's worse than that, right? Because when the government gives you numbers, like they say 5.3% unemployment, the number's probably 32%. I saw one report done by a pretty credible guy saying our unemployment rate is 42%. Because when you add back the 100 million people, you're right up to those numbers. But add back half of the 100. So we have a 20%, 25% unemployment rate. But this was done by politicians so that they look good. Because if you stop looking for a job, statistically, you are considered that you have a job. So then they say, oh, unemployment is down. We're down to 5.3. We're not down. Nobody has jobs. I mean, I wouldn't have caught on, to be honest, I wouldn't have caught on leading every poll. I wouldn't have been catching on, I think, if the economy were real. It's not a real economy. It's a phony set of numbers. They cooked the books. You ever hear the expression? Right? They cooked the books. The politicians cooked the books. So what happens is I get the reports yesterday, and the reports are amazing. I love polls. And somebody said, he talks about polls and the other people don't. That's because I'm winning. The other people are losing. It's true. No, I saw it on television. No, I saw it last night on television. Now, there may be a time when I stop talking about polls. If I'm number 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 12, some of these guys have nothing. They have 0 out of, 20,000 people. They didn't get 1 vote. They have 0. How do you do that? To me, that's more impressive than leading. You want to know the truth. No, it's true. So they said, I saw on television tonight, they said, he talked about, because I was in Iowa yesterday. It was amazing. Packed, overflow crowd, amazing people. Like you, they want to see the country be strong, and they want to see our country. Amazing people. So I was talking about the polls, and one of the reporters who's actually here today, one of those live people, and barely alive. No, they said on television, Mr. Trump talked about the polls. Well, the polls just came out. And I thought to myself, maybe I do talk about polls too much. And then I realized I've been leading since I came out. And Melania, my wife, and my daughter said, Dad, if you ever run, you're going to win. And I said, why do you say that? She said, it's because nobody thinks you're running. And if they poll you, nobody's going to give you. When they poll you, before I announced and before I signed my life away, because that's what you do. You sign your life away. It takes guts to run for office. Especially if you're not a politician. I never did this before, folks. That's why nobody understands what's going on. These guys, I have governors, senators, these guys are all, and so here's what happens. So Florida winning big, Florida, 29%. Pennsylvania, big, great, important state. Anybody from Pennsylvania? We love Pennsylvania. I love Pennsylvania. I'm there a lot. Pennsylvania, I'm leading big. Ohio. So the poll comes out, and it's Quinnipiac, which is a great company, great polling company, the real deal. And they just hate it. And I'm leading Ohio, and I'm beating a very nice guy and a good governor named Kasich by a lot. Kasich is a good governor. He's a good guy. And he's, I'm leading by a lot. And people say, what's going on? What's going on? Then they have a poll come out, OAN, which is a great poll. And I have 35%. 35. So we get, as I said, highest ratings in Fox, highest ratings in the history of CNN for these debates. The highest ratings. And by the way, all the polls, then they poll everything. I love these things. They poll who won the debate. Every single poll. Time Magazine, Drudge, Slate, places I never even heard of. Everyone said Trump. But then I turn on the television. Oh, Donald had a bad night tonight. I'm saying, I thought I won. And then they said, well, first of all, just to show you. So CNN, I like CNN. They're good guys. I think Jeff Zucker's a good guy. I think Roger Ailes is great from Fox. Great guy. But I tell you, I go home and I watch it. And I say, I'm going to watch myself on television. Who wouldn't do it? Right? We have to do it. So I say, that was good. Then I see the pundits coming. These highly paid guys that don't have a clue. They don't have a clue. And they say that they didn't like it. I was good in the first debate, but then they said, here's the beauty. For 28 minutes, I didn't say anything at the end. And then he faded in the end. I wasn't asked any questions. I wanted to say, they're so dishonest. So here's what happened. So for the first 2 hours, everything was me. It was either a question to me, right? These guys are honorable guys, even though they all have suits. Stand up and take a bow. They're rich guys. These guys are loaded. Look, that's why they're in the first row. That's why they're... Of course, I always heard in the theater, fourth row is the best. We're going to teach you guys. Fourth row is actually. But so they went out, and they do this thing on television, and they hit me. And I'm saying, I can't understand it. My daughter comes up. She says, Dad, every single polling organization you won. They all say you won. And I just think, but on the CNN debate, it was 2 hours, right? A 2-hour debate. Now, they were supposed to get, no, it was 2 hours, and then they made it 3 hours. No, it was a 2-hour debate when I got there. When I got there. Don't ruin my story. No, it was a 2-hour debate. And then about a day and a half or 2 days before, what happened is it was in Variety, it was in Hollywood Reporter, which is a terrific group. They did a nice cover story on me. I like them. Janice. But they did a story about rates. They took the rates from, in the case of Fox, I think in the case of CNN, from $4,000 for probably a 30-second ad to $200,000. So it was a 4,000% increase. Now Phil Ruffin's really perking up when he is. That's your language, right? So they went from $4,000 to $200,000, and they sold out. So I get there, and I didn't know this because Corey and Hope and all my people, they didn't tell me this. They said it's a 3-hour debate. Now the room, the Reagan Library, nice place, but it wasn't meant for that many people, and it was about 100 degrees in there. It was pretty hot. I didn't care. But you had a couple of people on that stage that was seriously, they were melting. Right? They were melting. It was actually good for them, and it was actually good. They went home, they lost 10 pounds. It's probably good. But they go out, and I get there, and I hear it's now a 3-hour debate. I said, that's a long time. I don't care about standing for 3 hours. I really have no problem. I was always a good athlete. But I don't have a problem. But you know what? Who the hell wants to watch a 3-hour? Gone with the Wind is 3 hours, right? But they did it just to make money. Just to make money. So the first question was mine. Second question was mine. Third question. Fourth question was to another guy. Mr. Trump said you're a horrible human being. Is that true? Then they go, Ms. Farina, Mr. Trump doesn't like your face. What do you say? What do you say? How do you respond? Well, the world will watch. And then they say, oh, she debated so brilliantly. Give me a break. No, the entire thing was either a question to me or a question to the other candidates having to do with me. And I think they came out specifically 48%. Then in the third hour, people started getting, it got to be too obvious, because I am a ratings machine, okay? It got to be too obvious. So for 28 minutes, they didn't ask me a question. So here's the press. He didn't do well in the final 28 hours. It's almost like he disappeared. They didn't ask me any questions, okay? It's so dishonest. So we have fun with it. But I have fun what I'm doing, and I'll tell you what, we're making an impact like I never thought possible. Like I never thought possible. I've seen great dishonesty in other ways, too. Politics, you know, I always thought that real estate guys in New York and elsewhere are pretty tough cookies, right? A lot of real estate guys in the room, I guess. But I always thought real estate guys are tough. Politics is a much dirtier business. So I get a call. This guy from Club for Growth. I never even heard of it. But my people said, oh, see it, Club for Growth. What is Club for Growth? You know what it is? They're growing the wallet in their pocket. That's what it is. So Club for Growth, supposedly a conservative outfit. So guy wants to see me. So he comes up to my office. We have a perfectly nice talk. He's telling me about Club for Growth, which is nice. And that was the end of it. He then sends me a letter, asks me if I'd make a $1 million contribution. Now think of it. A $1 million. I said, $1 million? You know, I may be rich, but we're not stupid, right? $1 million? $1 million. So he wants $1 million in a letter. He was stupid enough to put it in a letter. And he asked me for $1 million. We told him, obviously, how many in the room would say, oh, good, he was up in my office for a half hour or whatever it was, let's give him $1 million. I just can't do that. I can't do it. So what happens is we say very politely no, and we figure that's the end. All of a sudden he comes out, has a news conference, goes vicious against me. I'm not a conservative. I'm not this. I'm not that. I believe in eminent domain, which I don't believe. I think sometimes the city has to use it to build a roadway, right? You know, every once in a while you have to build a road, or you have to build a plant that's going to employ 5,000 people or something. I don't love it, but I mean, sometimes you need it. You wouldn't have any roads. You wouldn't have any economics. I mean, sometimes you need it. And they did this ad. The good news was it had no impact because the pictures were so beautiful. I want to find where did they get them. I was like 20 years younger. I look so handsome. I never knew I was that good looking. It's true. I look so good. So they spent $2 million or $1 million on advertisements, all because I turned them down. That shows you how dishonest politics is, though. Here they are, they come up, Club for Growth. I'll never forget the experience because I was shocked. My people came in, oh, Club for Growth just had a news conference. They absolutely lambasted you. Oh, they also said, he raises taxes. I just came out with a tax bill where I'm lowering far more than anybody else. In fact, so much so that the Wall Street Journal, which was bought for $5 billion and is now worth $500 million, but they'll criticize me, they did an editorial, it's too much. Now you tell me, you buy something for $5 billion, it's now worth $500 million, maybe not that, and maybe a couple of bucks more. And then they write these nasty editorials about me. Can you believe this? Can you believe it? So I get criticized. But you know, one of the things I was criticized for is my tax break is too big. They think it's too big. And what I'm doing is taking care of the middle class. And frankly, because we've lost the middle class. We've lost them. So then they give you bad editorials all the time. And here's the good news. I've had the worst editorials in the Wall Street Journal. I have never heard one person say, gee, that was a bad edit. I don't think anybody cares. Do they read these things or not? I get these editorials. I say, oh, that's devastating. And then, but they're criticizing also, assuming, other things. Well, there's a personal dislike, has to be their personal dislike. But the amount of the tax reduction is massive. And it's going to put people to work. And people are going to be energized. And the middle class is going to come back. We have, and I put them in the same category because people have forgotten about the middle class in this country. And that's what built. Middle-income people. That's what built the country. And you know who else they've forgotten about big time? Maybe even worse, the veterans. They've forgotten the veterans. They have totally forgotten the veterans. And I'll tell you what, if I get elected, everyone says, when? Don't say if, but look, I'm running against, it was 17. No, it was 17. I seem to have one great power. If I could sell it, I'd be 100 times richer than I am. And I'm rich, I'd be 100. And you know what the power is? So far, maybe I have to knock on wood, but so far, when people attack me, they get creamed. They go down. It's true. So I get attacked by Rick Perry, governor of Texas, right? He attacks me viciously. He was a friend of mine. I got along with him great. Now I'm leading practically from the time I got in. I think it's almost 3 months now. They say Michelle Bachmann, well, she led for a week. They say Herman Cain, great guy, but he led for a week. They say, well, they were there, but I'm there for 3 months. They haven't been like 3 months, right? It's a long time. It's a long time. But you get never. Stand up and say, stand up, say it. You're right. Do we love this guy? We love him. But if I win, I like that too. But again, you know what? When puts too much pressure on you. I always say to people, they say, how do you react? Pressure is very interesting because I've seen people that are really smart, they don't make it. I've seen people that are great athletes, they don't make it. They put unforced pressure on themselves. If I say if, there's much less pressure. Do you understand? Not when. Right? Am I right? Hey, I got a call from one of the biggest reporters, who actually I do have great respect for, one of the biggest. And I don't know him at all. And he's from a major newspaper, whose name I already mentioned. And he said to me, could I ask you one question? How does it feel? I said, how does what feel? He said, you've done something that nobody else has ever done. He said, it's very interesting. I think I'm on 14 covers. I'm on more covers than any supermodel in history. Can you believe it? No, can you believe it? I mean, every magazine. People, by the way, People magazine, I love the People. I didn't love the picture. I don't know. They did something with my nose. They played around. It's true. I don't understand. I loved People magazine. I loved the people of People magazine. The story was nice, but I didn't like what they did. They screwed around with, I said, just leave me alone. But Melania looked good, Barron looked good, I looked like hell. I have a feeling maybe they picked the picture. They might have picked it. I don't know. But I've been on, there it is. Come here. Let me have that. Come here. So let me say this. Where are you from?
I'm from Colombia.
Colombia.
I'm Hispanic.
And is this a setup? Did I ever meet you before? Huh?
I'm Hispanic and I vote for Mr. Trump. We vote for Mr. Trump. Yes, Mr. Trump. We love you. We love you. All the way to the White House.
I swear to you, I think she's totally beautiful and great. I never met her before, I swear. This all started with a People magazine. So here's the story. So I love the story. They couldn't have been nicer. Nice story, right? Couldn't be nicer. But I don't know what happened. They played with my nose. I don't want touching. I don't want touching. So I'm looking. Now you'll tell me. How's my nose? Right? That's fine, right?
It's beautiful and perfect.
Says it's I have a wart on the end of my nose. Can you believe it? And I said, oh my God, I don't have to look. It's terrible. But that's okay. Because they meant it well. I think they wanted to make me look like Cary Grant. Do we remember Cary Grant? And I've always wanted to look like Cary Grant. But anyway, you are beautiful. Will you make sure she doesn't fall? Come here. Thank you very much. Crazy. You're beautiful. Thank you, darling. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. Be careful. That was great. That's so great. Never met her before. She's amazing. She is amazing. Thank you, hon. Appreciate it. But that's my relationship with Hispanics. That's why when they did the poll in the state, in Nevada, and I led and nobody believes it, but that's my relationship. And, you know, in New York, we have a Hispanic station, and the MC of the station's a good guy. I don't know him, but I watched him interviewed on television, and he's talking about Trump. What about Trump? How bad is Trump? Is he? Well, he said, I don't know. Every viewer that calls in, they all love him. They love him. All Hispanic. They love Trump because they know I'm going to do what's the right thing. I love the Hispanic people. I employ thousands of them, and they know I'm going to do what's right. So, a couple of more things. I want to just talk about two things. So we have the Second Amendment, and they want to take your guns away. And we can't let it happen. We can't let it happen, and it's not going to happen. And I just put a policy paper. You know, the press wants me to put policy papers because at the beginning they say, we agree he's leading in the polls, but it can't go much longer. Because he doesn't put policy papers out, you know. I guarantee my IQ is much higher than any of these people. My uncle was one of the great professors at MIT. I mean, believe me, if it's good genes, we believe in genes, right? We're allowed to say that. So anyway, but I don't put policy. So I decided I'll put policy. So I put policy out on tax. I put policy out on immigration. I put policy out on the Second Amendment, which is basically you are allowed to protect yourself, okay? If you read it. And they said, don't you think it's important to start talking about policy? I said, I have. I said, it's only important for you. It's not important for the people because they know I'm going to do the right thing and they know my stance. But now we're keeping the press happy. They're all saying, oh, he's actually very policy-oriented because I put in a 14-page paper. But in the end, it's all very simple. And I will say this. I love being here with you. I loved yesterday my trip to Iowa. I loved the other day my trip I was in New Hampshire. I was in South Carolina. I am all the time. Somebody said, are you doing deals? A deal came over my desk last week because I'm running a business, but more and more I'm giving it to my kids to run, and they're good. and I have great executives, because I can't be doing this all the time, right? But I have to, because we want to win. We want to win. And deals come across my desk that are great deals, and I'd say, I don't want it. I don't want to focus on a deal. It's just not important anymore. You know, it's not important to me anymore. What's important is turning our country around. It's so important. What's important to me is, and I've been saying it over the last couple of weeks, and I've never said it much before that. I can't even remember having said it before that. So one of the networks today said, I've trademarked the expression, make America great again. Can you imagine? Who else is sick enough to trademark? Who would think of it? Because I had a couple of candidates using it. They see I go and I say, make America great again. Everyone stands there, go crazy. So they started using it, but the response isn't the same. It's, oh, great. Because they don't believe them. They're politicians. They're politicians. And you know, I was going to tell you before that, so all these guys that came out, they're all friends of mine, but then they come out viciously against me. Viciously. It's a horrible business, actually. The profession, whatever the hell you call it. It's horrible. So Perry came out, and he went from 5 to 0, and he left. Walker, he was a friend of mine. He was up in my office a year ago, gave me a plaque because I supported him. The professionals, you support somebody, you get a plaque, okay? I get a lot of plaques. Bing, you know what I do? I use them to put pictures of my family in there. But he came up, and he gave me a plaque, and he thanked me very much. And he was so nice. And then one of his guys came out and said bad things about me. Like, I said, whoa, is that really? Yeah, said bad. Trump's bad. He's a bad guy. I said, oh, thank you. And then I hit Walker very hard. And he was supposed to win. Do you remember? He was favored to win. They said governor of Wisconsin, but, well, I gave the real numbers. And I saw a magazine. It was a puff piece on him, but in one paragraph it said, big deficits, big strife, schools are in trouble, roads are in trouble. I said, I didn't know this. I thought it was all good. So I just gave those facts in Iowa, standing in Iowa, big news conference, and he got wiped out, and then he left. And when he left, it was nasty. He said, everybody has to leave, and leave one person to take on Trump. We've got to beat Trump. Can you believe that? I just want to do the right thing. And then we have, no, think of it. And then we have Lindsey Graham. No. He was always nice. He called me. He wanted a reference on something, and then he wanted campaign contributions. And he left me his number. He gave me his phone number, his cell number. And this was like 3 years ago. It's true. And I don't know why. I found it. I just have a whole pile of junk. I call that junk, see? That's junk, stuff that will never be used again. And all of a sudden, I found his phone number, and I had a news conference, and I held up his number. Here it is. And they said, read it out. Probably the press said that, because, you know, the press loves this. I read it out. And then I read it out a second time, and it destroyed. His phone blew up. It blew up. It was all over town. But he was a nice guy, and he wanted contributions, and he wanted support and all that, and that was fine. And, you know, my previous life, you know, I have 2 lives, right? I have previous life. I have my non-politician, the last little while politician. But I gave him a hard time. He went from 3, I only counter, you know, I'm a counterpuncher. I don't start these things. Everyone says he's a bad person, he's mean. I'm not mean. I get hit by these people. So he goes out, hit me, right? With that beautiful red hair. Look at her, stand up with that hair. Oh, I wish I had that hair. Looks good. Okay. So he hits me really hard. He's at like 2 or 3%. And I'm in the 20s and 30s. And he hits the hell out of me. I said, wow, the guy wanted like a campaign. He was a nice guy. What happened? He goes down, he's at 0. Now, they asked him the other day, will you leave? I will never leave. I will fight. Why not? Just leave. It's not working. Oh, and then they have the poll in South Carolina. Now, he's the senator from South Carolina. And I'm at 29 or 32, I think, something like that. And he's at 3, right? So something's wrong. He's probably not going to run for office again. Honestly, I think these guys have been mortally wounded. I don't even think they can go back into that career. And then we have Rand Paul. But he was another one. He was expected to win. And then he goes around before the last debate, and he's telling everybody, I'm going to attack Trump. He's not a true conservative. People are saying, yeah, but I like his ideas. I mean, you know, it's like, and I am. I'm a conservative guy. And he's vicious, and he's a vicious guy. He's a vicious little guy. I say, friend, easy, cool it, chill, don't just take it easy. But he's at news conferences telling everybody what a bad guy. Now, he was another one. He was expected to win. Now, in the meantime, he's running in Kentucky, and he's running here. And I have great respect for the people of Kentucky. I love that state. I love the people. But what are they, second-class citizens? Why is he running here and running there? I mean, pick your place. But he's running here, running there. So, and I told that, and I think it's unfair for the people of Kentucky. I don't know. How do you do that? How do you do it? So he starts getting really, really vicious. I mean, every time I see him, the things he was saying, I won't even say them because, I'll say them. No, I won't even say them. So what happens is, then he said, I will get him in the debate. I mean, you all, am I right? Is this right? I'm going to get him in the debate. I'm going to go after him. He's not going to have a chance. I'm going to do numbers on him that are unbelievable. So my first question, I attacked him. And he didn't, after that, he was perfectly nice. He didn't, in fact, he backed me up twice, right? He backed me up. He was perfectly nice. So this is sort of a crazy thing. Jeb Bush, he was doing great. No? Well, he's a nice guy, but he was doing great. But I immediately, when I think of the president, I think of somebody, you need somebody with tremendous drive, tremendous energy, and really up here, big league, right? And I didn't see the fire in Jeb. Stand up. Stand up. What was the expression? Low energy, he said. I don't know what, sometimes you'll say something about somebody and it sticks. It just like sticks. Sometimes you'll say, like I called Rubio a lightweight. I don't know. That might stick. It might not stick. I don't know. To me, water. Yeah, water. Shh. Remember the response on live television to the president's State of the Union speech? So they pick him because he's a young rising star. And he's talking, and he's sweating. And I'm watching, I'm saying, is he going to be okay? And he's sweating. And he keeps sweating. And the water's pouring down all over. And finally he goes. And I said, was that live television? But I called him a lightweight. And, he may be a nice guy. I really don't know him. I really don't. But, he attacked me viciously. And Bush attacked me viciously, as vicious as he could be, which isn't really that vicious because he's a nice person. And I said, he's a low-energy individual. And somehow that one stuck. I don't know if lightweight is going to stick with Rubio. Then, then I attacked Carly's record because her record running a business is a disaster. She was named to the CEO Hall of Fame as one of the worst in the history of the country. Right? But she's got that good pitter-patter, like a machine gun. But I said, if you listen for 10 minutes, you get a headache. You get a headache. Oh. You get a headache. And then it's funny. Boy, the press loves her. They love her. I see these polls where I'm at 29, she's at 6, and they're saying, here's the headline, Carly is surging. I'm at 29. Surging. I mean, honestly, she's surging. And Ben I like, because Ben said something very nasty to me. I do, I like him. He said something really nasty. Remember about my faith. I'm a religious person. I'm Protestant. Can you believe it? I'm Protestant. I'm Presbyterian. I'm religious. And Ben hit me in my faith. And I was all set to go after him. And then he took it back. And I can't. I can't do that. He took it back. I was all set. I was disappointed that he took it back. I didn't want him to take it back. Phil, I didn't want him to take it back. I was all set to go. And I couldn't do it because he stood up and he said, no, the press tricked me into saying something that I didn't mean, and I'm taking it back. And I said, that's cool. That's really nice. I thought it was nice. Please say something bad about me, Ben. Please. In fact, yesterday I stuck up for him because the press killed him. The press was saying, he made a statement essentially that if there were some maniac over there shooting people, he'd charge. Okay. They said, oh, that's terrible. That's disrespectful to the people that were killed. And I didn't see it that way. And I said, I think he was treated unfairly by the press. And it became a big story that I stuck up. So I actually stuck up for him. It's the first time I've ever done that. You know, I don't do that. I don't do that. So I just want to tell you, we're going to bring jobs back to this country. We're going to have Carl Icahn, one of the great business people of all time. Phil can tell you. We're going to have Phil. We're going to have the smartest, the best negotiators in the world, and I know most of them, and believe me, I know people you never heard of who are better than the ones that you did hear of. We're going to have people, it's not going to be because they gave me campaign contributions, because I turned down millions. I feel so foolish. I feel so foolish. You know, my whole thing in life has been accumulation, right? Now these guys come up. One guy wants to give $5 million to my campaign. He's a lobbyist. Wants to give a fortune. I don't want it. I feel like a jerk. I said, no. No. And I go like this. No, I do it very weakly. You know, I was in Iowa. I asked a question. I said, let me ask you a question. Supposing I'm self-funding my campaign, other than the little tiny ones where they send in, you know, women send in, we had a woman, $7.59. What do you do? How can you send the money back? First of all, it's too expensive to send it back. It costs you more money to send it back. But we have these little fun, and it adds up. It's, you know, it's cute. It's beautiful. They feel invested in your campaign. If you wrote them back a letter, I'm sorry, I don't want your money. It's nasty. But I don't want money. I don't want the big money. I don't want these guys giving me $5 million, $2 million, $3 million. I don't want it. So I turn them down, and it's just so different from what I really am. And I was in Iowa, and I said to the people, we had a packed house. I said, so look, I don't feel good about turning all these people down. I actually said, I feel like a schmuck, okay? You know that. How many Jewish people are in this room, right? Okay, you know, am I right? Stand up, am I right? I feel like, what am I doing? I'm turning down millions and millions of dollars. I'm taking nothing. And I asked the audience, I said, okay, look, how about if I take the money, but I swear to you I won't do anything for these people? And you know what they did? They stood up and they went crazy. They hated it. I said, I promise you, and here was the thing, I promise you, let me take millions of dollars from these people. I will not give them any favors. I will go out of my way not to give them favors. And everybody stood up and they went crazy. Don't do it. So maybe it means something. I'll tell you what, if I lose, I was stupid. Honestly. No, really. Because I don't think I get enough credit for self-funding. Because I'm putting, you know, I will be putting, as time goes by. So far, I've run such a campaign. I get so much publicity. I feel like crazy if I put an advertisement. What do I need it for, right? No, it's true. It's called, at CNN, they say, all Trump all the time. And then you put an ad in. It's like people would OD on Trump. They say, I can't take it anymore. So I've spent zero on that. Zero. You'll see it in the filing. Zero. But at some point, I'll do the ads. But I don't know if I get credit because I'm self-funding. I don't even know how. Do people in this room know that I'm self-funding? So we're going to bring back our jobs. We're going to negotiate great trade pacts. This last trade deal is a disaster. By the way, Hillary came out, she came out. The same thing I've been saying for 5 months. I took a commercial saying the trade deal was no good. The one that they want, it's no good. 11 countries, they're ripping off the United States, they're taking our jobs, and China is going to, not part of it, they're going to come in the back door, they're going to make a great deal. They always make a great deal with us because we're stupid, okay? We're led by very stupid people. So Hillary came out against it. Now, Obama wants it. Hillary came out against the president. Be careful, Hillary, you may be indicted. Be careful. Be careful. No. That's very dangerous for her to do. I give her credit. But the reason she did is that she thinks that someday she's going to be debating me about this trade deal as one of the things. I already have the pipeline, which I love that debate, okay? Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's a lot of jobs, not going to hurt anybody. Environmentally, nothing. It's not going to have any impact. And she made a mistake, but I love that. But she changed her mind yesterday on the trade deal. You saw that. And I'm telling you, Obama is angry at her. This could be the end on the emails. This could finally be the end. She could end up like General Petraeus. Seriously. This could be the beginning of the end. But I want to run against her. I really do. I want to run against her. So I don't want to run against Bernie. It's too easy, right? Bernie? Some people say communist, some people say socialist. I don't know. I've always wanted to run against a socialist / perhaps communist, right? In this country, I don't think it plays. I don't think. But we're going to take our jobs back. We're going to make our military so strong, so powerful, that nobody is going to mess with us, and we will not have to use it, in my opinion. But nobody is going to mess with us. As part of that, we are going to make our vets the cherished people that they should be. They are cherished, special people. Our wounded warriors, our vets, they're going to be taken care of properly. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. We're going to come up with a health care program that's going to be unbelievable. Your premiums will not be rising 55% like they're doing now. We're going to terminate Obamacare. We're going to come up with a plan that's so good and works, and everybody's going to be taken care of, but we're going to come up with a plan that works. So just remember, you look at your neighbor, you look at the people that you're sitting next to, because this is more than just a group of people listening to a speech. If you came here and listened to other candidates, you'd have 10 rows in the front, and you'd have a nice little chat, and everybody would walk home, and they'd be bored stiff, and they'd say, boy, was that boring. This is a movement. This is a movement. What's going on? This is a movement. This is a movement to take our country back. This is a movement to take our country back. It's like this everywhere. I'd like to say, oh, gee, you're wonderful, you treated me so nicely, but the truth is, it's like this everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. There is a movement on in this country to take our country back. And they used to use the term silent majority, right? Well, now it wasn't politically correct to use it because I think it had to do with Nixon. Nobody really knows, but whatever. But there is no more descriptive term, and I'm bringing it back. The silent majority. But let me tell you, before I tell you about silent majority, I realized as I brought it back a couple of months ago, and I was in front of a group from South Carolina that was going absolutely wild. And I said, the silent majority. And I realized the term doesn't work anymore because it's really the really loud, noisy, incredible majority. That's what it is. We're tired. We're tired. We're tired of being pushed around. We're tired of being led by stupid people. We're tired of having our negotiators give Iran $150 billion, 24-day inspection periods, self-inspection. We don't get our prisoners back. We're tired of having them approach us 2 days ago and say, we should have had our prisoners back. Used to be 3, now it's 4. Say, we want to give you 3 prisoners back, but we want 19 people from you, and we want many other things, and that should have been included in the deal. We're tired of it. We're tired of Sergeant Bergdahl, who's a traitor. He's a traitor, a no-good traitor, who should have been executed. We get Sergeant Bergdahl, and they get 5 of the biggest killers that they've wanted more than any people for years. They've been trying to get these 5 killers, and they're all now back on the battlefield, and we've got Bergdahl, and yesterday I heard he probably won't even serve any time, and 30 years ago he would have been shot. And people are tired of it. So just remember this day, because things are happening. And if it all happens, and I think it might very well, we are going to make this country great again, greater than ever before, and it's going to be something special. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, wow, he did change up songs. Usually he plays, "We're not gonna take it." And I don't know what the purpose of the change was. Just trying to mix it up, I suppose. If you missed it earlier, I've got today's headlines for you. We want to keep you in the loop of... What did I do? Oh, there it is. We want to keep you in the loop of what's going on today, not only in the country, but specifically in the Valley. Here in Phoenix. Sorry, I'm resizing something on my Alpha screen. Yeah, I am still enjoying Trump's speeches, but I do feel like he's got a different energy these days. So let me show you these headlines from today.
I'm John Hook with your Fox 10 Facebook News Update. A chaotic scene outside a QT near 19th Avenue in Southern where a dog was attacking customers. According to Phoenix police, an officer responded and tried to subdue the dog. When he was unable to restrain the dog, the officer fired 2 shots, one striking a customer in the foot, the other hit the dog, and the dog died. The customer, who was being attacked when the officer fired, is recovering from the gunshot wound and from dog bites. A U.S. airman who helped stop a terror attack on a train in France is stabbed during a bar fight. That fight caught on surveillance video. Airman Spencer Stone stabbed in the upper body. He will survive. Police are looking for the suspects. A Chandler family forced to jump from a second-story window to escape a house fire. It happened near McQueen and Fry. Firefighters say the father woke up, got everybody out of the house to safety. The cause of that fire under investigation tonight. Representative Kevin McCarthy drops out of the race for U.S. House Speaker. The California Republican pulled out of the running today. Congressman Daniel Webster of Florida and Jason Chaffetz of Utah are now considered frontrunners for the job. Take a look at the 10-day forecast. Temperatures climbing back into the high 90s for the weekend. That's your Fox 10 Facebook News Update. I'm John Hook.
All right, and if you were with us earlier, you saw Hillary Clinton speak at this event. I'm going to go ahead and play Obama's speech from this event. I didn't realize at the time. I thought I overheard somebody yelling during Hillary Clinton's speech, and this was at the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute Awards Gala. I thought I heard somebody yelling during Hillary Clinton's speech, but I wasn't 100% sure until I checked Twitter, and Twitter confirmed it, as well as when Hillary was done, the host came out and said, you know, this isn't scripted, but I just have to give props to politicians that have to deal with people just ripping into them. And you couldn't tell by Hillary's face that she was being yelled at by somebody in the audience. So it was really interesting to see, but it looks like President Obama talks for a few minutes here at this event. It was a, tuxedo ties, bow ties, and gowns event. Very beautiful. Hopefully we'll get to see more of that during this portion of the event. But again, this is the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute Awards Gala, the 38th annual, and you also heard Hillary earlier taking some swipes at Trump. We'll see what Obama has to say and if he references Donald Trump at all.
Is everybody happy? You all ate? We're back. I'm starving, but I wanted to change for you guys. So, damas y caballeros, please welcome Congresswoman Linda Sanchez and Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Julian Castro.
If we could get everybody's attention. Thank you. I'm truly honored to have our next guest with us tonight, and I know you're eagerly awaiting his arrival. So I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, the Honorable Julian Castro.
Good evening. Thank you so much for that fantastic welcome. It is truly an honor to share the stage with such a phenomenal leader, your chair, Congresswoman Linda Sanchez. Let's give her a big round of applause. I also, of course, want to thank the entire CHCI family for your commitment to bolstering Latino leadership throughout the nation. In 2009, just a few months into his presidency and facing a national economic crisis, our next speaker came to CHCI and pledged to work with the Latino community to meet the great challenges of our time. He promised to make health care in the United States a right, not a luxury for the lucky few. To improve our schools so that more young people make that proud walk across the graduation stage and into the brighter future. To stop promoting an economy that only benefits a few and start investing in smart, sustainable growth that works for everyone, from the factory worker to the school teacher to the small business owner. He said that our nation's success has long depended on our willingness to see our challenges as ones that we have to face together, and our willingness to live up to a simple ideal. Todos somos Americanos. We are all Americans. And it's clear that it wasn't just rhetoric. On issue after issue, he's delivered. We see that in the families who can now afford to take their children for regular doctor's visits, the young people who are ready to succeed in our highly competitive global economy, and the mother who got a pink slip in 2008 but now gets paychecks from her new job created in America's growing economy. The president has also taken bold action on immigration, using the force of his office to allow millions of undocumented immigrants to come out of the shadows while continuing to fight for comprehensive immigration reform. As one of the founders of this great caucus, former Congressman Henry B. Gonzalez once said, "People will respond to you if they can believe what you say. People will trust you if you keep your word." This president came into office saying, "Sí se puede." Well, nearly 7 years later, the verdict is in. Sí pudimos. He's championed the issues important to Latinos like no one who's ever sat in the Oval Office before. And today, I'm proud that all of us can say, sí se puede, sí pudimos, y sí podremos. Please join me in welcoming a man that I'm proud to work for, the best friend that Latinos have had in the Oval Office, and the 44th President of the United States, President Barack Obama.
Back. Buenas noches. Well, it is good to be here. Thank you, Secretary Castro, not just for the introduction, but for the great work he's doing on behalf of the American people every single day. Thank you to your chair, Linda Sanchez, for her outstanding leadership in the Congress. Thank you to all of you for having me here tonight. Thank you.
I'd like to begin my remarks with a story. I love you too, but I got to tell you this story here. So on an evening about 75 years ago, in the Boyle Heights neighborhood of Los Angeles, a young man proposed to the woman of his dreams. Any of us who've done that, and I have, know at that moment he was feeling pretty nervous. And fortunately for him, she said yes. And because apparently he was making the kind of money I was making when I proposed, to celebrate, they went to a hot dog stand. Things were simpler back then. But things took a wrong turn. Authorities suddenly pulled up, lined them up, patted them down, demanded to see their IDs, just because they were Mexican-American. And when the young man handed over his wallet, the officer pulled the cards out of it and just dropped them on the sidewalk, and then he said, "Now you pick them up." I remember getting on my knees and picking them up, that young man said decades later. And we can imagine his fear and his humiliation. What had been a beautiful day had suddenly become an example of occurrences that were happening far too often. And imagine how easy it would have been for him at that moment to turn to despair and to allow the anger and the resentment to feed a cynicism, and for him to decide that America could never change. But that young man was named Ed Roybal. And Ed Roybal never lost faith in himself or in his country. And less than 25 years after he was brought to his knees on the streets of Los Angeles, Ed stood under the Capitol dome to represent those very same streets in the Congress of the United States of America. He dedicated his life to the idea that America can change, that our union can become more perfect. And today his legacy lives on, not only in the legislation he passed and the improvements he made in his district, but also in his daughter, Lucille, who's here tonight. And he helped start the Congressional Hispanic Caucus because he knew that we are stronger together than we could ever be alone. And that's the same reason I ran for this office 8 years ago. Not because I believed in what I could do, but because I believed in what we could do together. The financial crisis hadn't even hit yet, and we came to understand it was going to make our job a lot harder. But thanks to the members of the Hispanic Caucus, thanks to people like Nancy Pelosi, who is standing here tonight, thanks to the determination and fundamental optimism of the American people, we have made progress. When I took office, the unemployment rate was on its way to 10%. Today, it's 5.1%. The unemployment rate among Latinos hit 13%. We brought that down to 6.4%. When I took office, we were losing about 800,000 jobs a month. Today, our businesses have created jobs for a record 67 months in a row, more than 13 million new jobs overall. When I took office, more than 15% of Americans, including nearly 1 in 3 Hispanics, lacked health insurance. Today, we've covered another 17 million Americans, including 4 million Latinos, and only 9.2% of Americans are uninsured. For the first time on record, more than 90% of Americans have health insurance. For the first time ever, insurance companies can't discriminate against anybody with a pre-existing condition. When I took office, we were still too often stuck in a Cold War mentality that began before many of us were even born. And today, for the sake of our people and our entire hemisphere, we have reestablished relations with Cuba. We have turned the page on the failed policies of the past. We have strengthened our relationship with Latin America. We've put forward a plan to invest $1 billion in our shared security and prosperity in Central America. When I took office, hardworking young people, Americans in every way but on paper, lived in constant fear of deportation. Today, more than 680,000 dreamers live and study and work freely and openly in the country they've always called home. We've got smarter enforcement priorities because it makes no sense to focus on separating families when we can be going after felons instead. We're taking new steps to reach out to folks who are eligible to become citizens and attract immigrant entrepreneurs and educate STEM students. We're going to help more husbands and wives of American citizens get their green cards without separating them from their families. And the deferred action policies I announced last year will help millions of mothers and fathers remain in the United States of America with their families. And although it is taking us longer than we hoped, I know we're on the right side of the law, and we are going to keep fighting to prove it. We haven't won every battle. We've still got a lot more work to do. But when the cynics told us we couldn't change our country for the better, they were wrong. There are more job openings today than at any time in our history. The high school dropout rate is near the lowest on record, and Latino students making some of the fastest gains. More Americans are graduating from college. The deficits are down by 2/3. The amount of foreign oil we buy is down. Teen pregnancy is down, all of which makes you wonder, why are some of the folks who are running for my office so down on America? Well, no, I'm definitely not doing that, but by most measures, we are better off now than we were 7 years ago. And that we know. Of course, none of it comes up in their debates. I mean, they have invented this new reality where everything was terrific back in 2008 when the unemployment and the uninsured rates were rising and dreamers lived in fear of deportation and we were engaged in 2 wars and bin Laden was still large. That was the golden era, apparently, the good old days. And then I came along and messed it all up. And now when you listen to them, you still don't know what they're for, except turning back the clock on the work that we've done together. Repealing Obamacare, gutting Wall Street reform, allowing power plants to pollute the air our children breathe. And there's nowhere where they want to go further backwards than on immigration. You know, it wasn't that long ago that my predecessor, George W. Bush, a Republican, a conservative Republican from Texas, with whom I disagreed with on a whole lot of things, made immigration reform one of his core priorities. We cannot build a unified country, he said, by inciting people to anger or playing on anyone's fears or exploiting the issue of immigration for political gain. That's what he said. Think how much better our economy would be if the rest of his party got the message. Think about how much better off our country would be if Republican politicians hadn't spent years precisely trying to scare voters with tale of immigrants flooding across our borders and taking our jobs and destroying America as we know it, even though we know that when you look at what's happening at the borders, it's the lowest rates of immigration that we've seen since the 1970s. A clear majority of Americans, including a lot of Republican voters, support reform. That's
One of the reasons we got a bipartisan bill through the Senate in 2013. But now, some of the very same Republican politicians who championed reform in the past, some of whom sponsored these efforts, suddenly they want nothing to do with it. In these circumstances, I always say, don't boo, vote. Yeah, they can't hear the boos, but they can hear your vote. But the point is, that's not leadership. Turning against what's right the moment the politics of your base gets tough. Leadership is not fanning the flames of intolerance and then acting all surprised when a fire breaks out. Saying clearly inflammatory things and then saying, well, that's not what I meant, until you do it again and again and again. So we've got to decide whether or not we as Americans are willing to stand up against this kind of bigotry, the same cruel impulse that Ed Roy Ball spent a lifetime fighting against. The anti-immigrant sentiment that has infected our politics is not new, but it is wrong. It was directed at Irish folk. It was directed against Italians. There have been generations of immigrants that have been subject to this same kind of attitude, with some of the same stereotypes. It wasn't right then, it's not right now. And unless you were one of the first Americans, unless you're Navajo or Cherokee, somebody somewhere came from someplace else. I believe we need an immigration system that is fair and orderly and lawful. I believe that people who come here illegally should have to pay a fine and pay their fair share of taxes and get registered and get right with the law and go to the back of the line before they earn citizenship. But when I hear folks talking as if somehow those kids are different from my kids, as if they're less worthy in the eyes of God, that somehow their families are less worthy of our respect and consideration and care, as if somehow back in the day everybody had their papers in order when they came here, but now suddenly nobody has their papers in order. I believe we're better than that. If you want to be taken seriously as a leader, you can't just be against everything. You got to be for something. You can't just feed on fear. You should be feeding hope. You should be for fixing our immigration system. You should be for allowing dreamers and their parents who've been here for years to live without fear in the country they love. You should tell the truth, which is that illegal border crossings are lower than they've been in decades, and that economists agree that immigration does not hurt our economy, it grows our economy, creating jobs, raising wages for Americans. You don't hear those facts very often, but those are facts. And you've got to recognize that America's greatness does not come from building walls. Our greatness comes from building opportunity. Our greatness comes from building an economy that works for everybody. Our greatness comes from a dream that says in this country, if you work hard, you can build a better life for your family. No matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter what your last name is. That's what makes America great. So I'm going to spend every day that I have left in this office fighting to restore that dream so that everyone who works hard can get ahead. And yes, that includes immigration reform. But that's not all that we've got to do. We've got to keep creating good jobs. We've got to make sure every family feels our country's recovery in their own lives, and that includes the families in Puerto Rico. We've got to make 2 years of college as free and universal as high school is today. We've got to stop spending billions of taxpayer dollars keeping nonviolent drug offenders behind bars and give them a chance to get right and back on the right track. We've got to make sure that every child gets a world-class education from an earliest age, that every person who's still uninsured gets covered, that every school and every street is safe from the madness of gun violence. And this change will not be easy because change never is. Change is never easy. It takes longer than 1 year. It takes longer than one term. It takes longer than the tenure of one president. But what we together have shown and proven is that when we stick together and put our shoulders to the wheel of history, not only is change possible, change is inevitable. America can change, and if we keep dreaming of something better and organizing for something better, if we keep voting for something better, together we're going to build on the progress we've made. We're going to create a brighter future for our children. Si se puede. Juntos podemos. Thank you, CHC. Thank you, CHCI. Que Dios los bendiga. God bless America.
All right, thank you to everyone that stuck with me through that video. I see you in the chat room, and I appreciate you. Just stick on track of politics. Let's head over and check out Jeb Bush campaigning in Iowa today.
Do it in an unstable world. The world we're in right now is incredibly lacking of security. And here's what I've concluded, and I hope you agree with me. America's leadership in the world, not as the world's policeman, America's leadership in the world is a force for good. America's leadership in the world creates security. The next president's word needs to matter. No more red lines. No more grandiose talk. No more calling Putin a regional power and 30 days later allowing him with little consequence to invade a neighboring country. No more suggesting that we're pivoting to Asia and then taking no actions as China begins to build a military capacity in the South China Sea and take over territory that is not theirs based on international law. The United States needs to lead. Our friends need to know that we have their back, and our enemies need to fear us a bit. Name one country in the world where our relationship is better today than it was the day that Barack Obama got elected president. That's actually a question. Cuba, normally people say, and Iran. There are a lot of places, including Canada, certainly Israel, most of Latin America, most of Asia right now, wondering where the United States is. Are they a reliable partner? Will they be there? Will the alliances be maintained? And restoring that is the means by which we can create an environment where we can grow together. The simple fact is you can't withdraw from the world and be successful economically, and we have to be successful economically if we want to create peace and stability in the world. Those two things together is the mission, I believe, of the next President of the United States. The final thing I'd say relates to style, relates to character, relates to something that is kind of counterintuitive these days. You know, if you watch, did anybody watch the debates? Probably, I mean, like 25 million people watched, and if you showed up here at 8 in the morning, I'm pretty certain that you're interested in politics, so my guess is you did watch the debate. And what I've concluded, I didn't watch it, I was right there, literally right there. What it validated for me is it's not about the personalities on the stage. It's not about the big voices and the grandiose talk. It's about people that are really struggling. And so when I wake up each day, I'm thinking, wow, I'm running for President of the United States, the most amazing country in the face of the earth. What an honor, what a privilege. I want to share my love and joy for this country, and I want to give people hope that they can rise up. My energy, my passion, my conviction are for the people that are really struggling right now. Like a single mom in a big urban area that has got her child on a waiting list to go to a high-performing charter school, but is languishing on that waiting list, and they're stuck in a failing school. Or the challenge of a military family wondering whether the cuts in the military are actually going to make it harder for their loved one to come home because of the extended military engagement, and whether the equipment will keep them safe and that they make it back home. Or the couple that I met in Denver, Colorado that had a business of 4 people that told me, in all honesty, they were about ready to close their business because of the complexity and costs of Obamacare. There are a lot of people that are not looking for a handout. What they're looking for is an environment where everybody has the benefit to rise, where the system is fair for all, where it isn't just about accessing the power corridors of Washington, D.C. America does it best from the bottom up. We solve our problems better from the community rather than from the federal government. We engage better in taking advantage of the uniqueness of each part of this diverse country. When we solve problems and we grow our economy, everybody benefits. This should not be about those that have already made it and protecting their little part of the pie. We need to expand the pie and make sure that everybody has the capacity to go pursue their dreams with a vengeance. That's where my passions lie, and I believe we're on the verge of the greatest time to be alive, and I hope you share that enthusiasm, and I really appreciate you allowing me to come today. Thank you all very much. Did I lose it while I was That would have been disappointing.
Thanks, Governor. Thanks for joining me for this question and answer portion of our program today. We'll now open it up to questions for Governor Bush. Please make your way to the aisles. There are 2 people with microphones that you can line up and do questions with. As a reminder, please keep your questions respectful. We also have only a limited amount of time with the governor, so please keep your questions brief and to the point. We ask that the media please refrain from asking questions so we can allow for a maximum number of audience members to participate by asking their questions. But first, ask some questions that I will ask the governor.
A pretty long line here.
We do. From our sponsors. And the first is brought to you by AARP. What would you do to address Social Security's financial shortfall and reform the program to put it on stable ground for future generations?
Well, first of all, I think the objective for any of the either the supplemental retirement system, that's Social Security, or the entitlement programs is to preserve and protect it for those that have it now, and to prepare for the structural problems that we face because of our changing demography. So, look, if you're 67 years old, the contract needs to be fulfilled. But if you're 37, it won't be fulfilled because the costs of this, the change in Social Security is such that it's hard to imagine how it would work. I mean, think about it. We had 30 people working for one person that was retired in the 1950s. When the Social Security was created, people received benefits at 65 and life expectancy was 65. That wasn't a wild-eyed idea. That was pretty conservative underwriting if you think about it. Now, thank goodness, we're all living longer. Our demography has changed. We're moving towards 3 people to 1, and ultimately we could get to 2 to 1 if there's no changes. So I think we need to continue to raise the retirement age for people that, you know, are not for people now, but for people that are moving forward. I don't know when you would start this, but similar to what happened in the 1980s. We're just now nearing the end of raising the retirement age to 67. In my tax plan, I've proposed that people that are working at the age of 67, and there are a lot of people that don't have the ability to retire completely, given the economic circumstances that they face, to not have to pay payroll taxes anymore. It would be a huge boost for elders, for seniors, to be able to keep that 6+% in their own family's budget. And I think we need to look at means testing these programs over the extended period of time. There are solutions to Social Security that could protect it for more than a generation. And I think we need to find a way to create consensus for it to happen. Medicare is actually a bigger challenge because the underlying cost drivers of Medicare are health care, and we've not bent the cost curve with Obamacare. We still have health care inflation, if you will, that is higher than inflation for the rest of our budgets. And so reforming the underlying health care part of this has got to be it's a challenge, but it needs to be done in concert with looking at Medicare and Medicaid and Obamacare, all of which are going to create out-year budgets, structural deficits that are they're huge. I mean, you can't ignore it. There are some that want to. They want to be in denial, or they think denial is a river in Africa. It isn't. Denial is a bad thing. And the longer we wait to solve these problems, the power of compounding is our enemy, not our friend.
Thank you. The next comes from the Des Moines Area Community College. Nationally, 32% of U.S. employers indicate that they have difficulty finding skilled employees, with as many as 3 million open positions at any one time. The greatest need is middle-skilled workers requiring more than a high school diploma, but no more than 1 to 2 years of community college or credentialing process. What would you do in your first 100 days as president to address the national middle skills worker shortage, and how would you incent and support more individuals to enter into training for the good jobs that are open?
This is a great question and completely accurate. 3 million skilled jobs unfilled. And what a tragedy when you see declining income and the skills gap creates throughout this recovery, 3 million jobs unfilled. And it's the common thing you hear when you talk to small businesses and businesses in general is the inability to find quality workers. So the community college system can play a huge role in dealing with that gap. And I think they ought to be given much more leeway to innovate in that regard. In Florida, our community college system has done an incredible job at a significantly lower cost than the 4-year per student funding. And there should be outcome measures and there should be rewards for success. I think there ought to be bonuses for giving people AS degrees and AA degrees that immediately give them a chance to get a job. There should be rewards and incentives to do this. You know, if it's a 2-year degree, it should be done in 2 years. By the way, we can do that in higher education, the 4-year degrees as well. We measure 4-year degree completion in 6 years. Full-time equivalent students, 6 year. Why don't we call it a 6-year degree? God forbid. If we were college attainment today is lower than it was. We were one in the country, one in the world since World War II for a long while. Now we're not. Now we're 15th. And so I think there needs to be reform across the board. Our training programs, accelerating the certificate, access to certificates. Community colleges, I don't think need as much reform because they've always been the community-based, lower-cost, higher output provider in the whole spectrum of learning. And so there are ways that we can accelerate this. I think businesses could play a bigger role. Sometimes I've noticed that community colleges and centers of higher learning are a little reluctant to have too much private sector involvement. But in fact, it's called a community college for a reason, right? It's community. And the community, serving the community is to deal with this skills gap. Final thing I'll say is, I don't know how many of the myriad of job training programs that exist nationally, but this is an opportunity time. This is an opportune time to bring our job training into the 21st century. We have mid-20th century training programs that aren't delivering. We spend a lot of money, and there are a lot of people working in the programs to train people, but not many people are getting trained for real jobs. So I think this is an opportunity to create community-based solutions where you start. If communities want to try something different, we ought to allow for the block granting of the monies that go in the 55 separate job training programs or something like that. Push this to the communities and forge consensus there. I bet you that this partnership that you have in working with your stakeholders could come up with a far better way to deal with the skills gap than people stuck in the Department of Labor in Washington, D.C. I'll put my money on you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
That's a low bar, but still I'm confident.
We'll still take it.
You can whoop them.
And then our final sponsor question is from Microsoft. Congress is currently considering how law enforcement can access emails, photos, and other communications stored in the cloud, both in the U.S. and abroad. Should personal information stored digitally have the same legal protections as the same information stored in your home? If U.S. law enforcement can get personal information on citizens of other countries stored digitally abroad, as they claim they can do, other countries may demand the personal data of Americans stored in the U.S. Doesn't that infringe on the rights of U.S. citizens?
It can, and I think we have to develop a thoughtful response to the balance of protecting the homeland. This question relates to private citizens that have no nexus to any national security issues, and so if it's purely a privacy issue, I think there needs to be protections for sure, similar to what we have as was suggested of personal privacy rights in one's home. You have to go through there has to be a well-founded basis to be able to identify the personal information, whether it's tangible or digital, for sure. The bigger issue, I think, the bigger conflict is how do we protect the homeland? How do we protect privacy rights for American citizens that have done nothing wrong, but also deal with the fact that there are evildoers out there that want to destroy the country? I mean, when ISIS describes their primary motivation to put the black flag of ISIS on the White House, you can just discount that and say, oh, they're just, they're not serious, or you can take them seriously because that's in fact what they want. And they murder innocents. A Christian can't live in Syria or Iraq right now. Mosul used to be a place where for 1,400 years mass was administered, no longer. I mean, we're living in a really perilous time, and to be naive, to not think that there's an effort to try to undermine our freedoms and to create a larger caliphate, I think is naive. So I would hope we could find a proper balance between personal liberty and protecting the homeland. I don't think the reauthorization of the Patriot Act did that, in all honesty. And then the final part of this, Europe's because of the Snowden deal and the leaks that occurred prior to that, the Manning case, all these things have created real mistrust between the United States technology companies and the Europeans. And frankly, I think Europe is also concerned that we dominate these fields, that we have such a advanced technological sector that they're, maybe I'm cynical, but I think they're also using this fear of privacy as a way to also stall out the tremendous advantage that our technology companies have. So this requires full engagement. I mean, this is work in progress. There could be real damages done if Europe follows through with basically cordoning off information by country. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of the cloud and its benefits to be able to cure diseases, to create more productivity, to create better benefits to consumers, and all the things that it brings.
Thank you. Now we'll open it up for questions. I know there's several of you online.
We'll only be here for about 5 hours.
We're going to start on this side, and we'll alternate back and forth as best we can.
I'll try to get to yes, no.
All right. Thank you, Governor. My name is Kelly Sawyer with Every Child Matters in Iowa. And on a past visit to Iowa, actually Council Bluffs, I was over there, and you had referenced Robert Putnam and Charles Murray.
I did.
And they basically talking about if you are born poor, you're more likely to stay poor. If you are born wealthy, more likely to stay wealthy. As president, what specific policies or solutions do you have to close the opportunity gap so all children have that same right to reach the American dream?
It's not a cliche to say what was just repeated, and both the left and the right, at least those that have studied this, and Murray and Putnam are probably two leading social scientists in this regard. We're sticky at the ends. If you're born wealthy, increasingly you're stuck, fortunately for you, at the higher end. If you're born poor, sadly, you're stuck at the bottom. And the middle's getting squeezed. So that's the great challenge of our country. In fact, it's not a question of income inequality. It's more of a question of social and economic mobility. And the single biggest thing that I think we can do, there's a lot of things that we could do. Safe communities would be helpful. Making sure that all the government programs are focused on not destroying, hurting family life, but actually strengthening it. Many of the transfer payment programs actually require two-parent families not to exist. I mean, there's things that we need to adjust and be serious about looking at to bring these programs into the 21st century. But a quality education is definitely the biggest tool that government, the biggest role that government can play in dealing with the gap that exists that you described. And I think that needs to be bottom up rather than top down. But if for example, in Florida, we have the highest participation rate in early childhood literacy programs of any state in the country. 144,000 kids go to literacy-based half-day four-year-old programs. It could be better, and I hope it does get better. It could be more focused on literacy-based. We should really make sure that we're constantly striving to improve. But 75 to 80% of all four-year-olds go to those programs in Florida. Other states are way behind, and we've had the greatest gains in learning in the K-5 system of any state in the country. In fact, Florida is in the top 3 or 4 for a state that has 57 to 58% of its kids qualified for free and reduced lunch. It works. It works if you make it a priority. The federal government needs to be a partner in that. So they have, back to the job training deal, I don't know, it's 50-plus programs. Early childhood education, the same thing. Why not be a partner to create strategies? If this partnership in the Chamber of Commerce and all the affiliated organizations say in Des Moines that we're going to make sure that every 4-year-old has at least a half day, maybe even more, of literacy-based learning, voluntary, it's not forced, but voluntary, and you brought the resources to bear to make that happen, why shouldn't the federal government be a partner to provide their money without strings attached? That's where I think we need to get. Not an example of what you're describing, but a community-based solution. In Houston, Texas, people were outraged that veterans were homeless, wandering the streets of downtown Houston. It's heartbreaking. If it happens here, it shouldn't happen. They need to get access to mental health issues. They need a Veterans Administration that is totally focused on them. There's lots of things we can do. Well, the Houston Partnership, a version of like this, I believe, isn't that right? I mean, the same kind of group. They created a strategy to eliminate homelessness, and they did it. That's the way to do this. And I think the federal government needs to just, you know, chill out a little bit in terms of their rules and how they do it, and it's got to be top down, and focus on ways to use the leverage that they have, it's typically resources, to be able to bring it to bear to create homegrown strategies that really matter.
Thank you. I'll go over here.
Good morning, Governor Bush.
Good morning.
My name is John Olson, and I was wondering, where do you stand on the Voting Rights Act? Do you believe it should be reauthorized? If not, why not?
Reauthorize, you said?
Yes.
I think that if it's to reauthorize it to continue to provide regulations on top of states as though we were living in 1960, because those were basically when many of those rules were put in place, I don't believe that we should do that. There's been dramatic improvement in access to voting. I mean, exponentially better improvement. And I don't think there's a role for the federal government to play in most places. There could be some, but in most places where they did have a constructive role in the 60s. So I don't support reauthorizing it as is.
Hi, Governor Bush. Thank you for being here today. Based on your experience with education in Florida, how do you plan on applying those skills to the federal level, making larger changes to the whole nation, necessarily or specifically looking at education standards?
So, the federal government should play no role in the creation of standards, content, or curriculum. That's not their proper place. It's just inappropriate to do that. But the power of the president is to convene. So, look, I'm not going to go crazy on you, but I'm really passionate about this. The whole debate about education is misguided. It's on the wrong subject. The real subject is this economic and social mobility question, where if you're born poor, you're likely to stay poor. And we think that education is working in our own communities, you know, in our own families and the like, but it really isn't if you measure it compared to who we should be measuring it to, which is the rest of the world. And the challenge is that a third of our kids are college and or career ready. Let that pause. Just meditate on that. We spend more per student than any country in the world other than Belgium and Luxembourg or something like that. Literally 2 or 3 countries. And we get that result. I'm not kidding. I'm serious about this. A third. No one should be doing high fives with 2/3 of our kids either not graduating from high school or graduating from high school but then going to Des Moines Community College and being told, sorry, you're going to have to redo high school math and high school reading. That's not acceptable. That's where the skills gaps start. That's why we have 3 million people that aren't finding jobs. It's one of the key reasons. And so the President of the United States needs to create a sense of urgency about how we change this. It shouldn't be a top-down driven plan, but there are lots of ways the federal government could play a role in partnering for real reform. I mentioned one, early childhood education. How about children with learning disabilities? 500,000 kids in Florida have learning disabilities of some kind. They get additional funding, but they have the worst outcomes altogether. More money, less results. Well, we created a voucher program for kids with learning disabilities. 30,000 kids go to private schools because their mom or dad did not believe their individual education plan is being met unilaterally. The net effect was that kids in public school have had the greatest learning gains. Kids with learning disabilities in public schools in Florida have led the nation on the nation's report card. All schools get better when you empower parents to have choices. Why not provide IDEA money, the federal monies, to go for reform-oriented states that have the courage to tear up the monopolies? Why not do the same as it relates to low-income kids? We have the largest corporate tax scholarship program in the country with 80,000 kids going to private schools. Low-income kids, their parents want to go to a better school. The school that they were in was not acceptable to them. If you're rich, you can go to a private school. No big deal. If you're poor, you're stuck. Why not have the federal government be a partner to disrupt the order there? There's lots of ways that the federal government can play a role. And then the power of convening. There are so many successful, high-performing schools across the spectrum of life in this country, but they're marginalized because monopolies don't go quietly into the night. I don't know if you've noticed. They just don't respond there's no sense of urgency when you know next year everybody's going to have to go to the same school they were going to before. There's roles to play as it relates to teacher preparation. There's a lot of things the federal government can do, but it shouldn't lead the charge. It should be a partner in a bottom-up kind of approach. And Florida would take that money in a heartbeat, and it would improve the quality of education and access to education for thousands and thousands of more kids. Just to remind you, we were at the bottom, 50th out of 50 in graduation rate. We're now at the national average, more or less, in 15 years' time. We've had improvement every year. Our kids were 29th out of 31 on the NAEP test, the Nation's Report Card Test in 4th grade reading. 10 years after I turned the system upside down, we were 6th out of 50 states. Low-income kids are #1 in the country in Florida. Hispanic kids do two grade levels ahead of their counterparts in the country. You can do this, but it needs to be state and locally driven.
I think this is going to have to be our last question right over here.
Hi, former governor. I'm a sophomore in Des Moines Area Community College. When your Republican colleague, Mr. Rubio, announced running for president, he said just yesterday, a leader from yesterday began a campaign for president by promising to take us back to yesterday. He said, but yesterday is over. We are never going back. I know who he was addressing. But if
I think it was Hillary Clinton.
But if you're elected president, what opportunities would be created for this young generation to keep steering the United States as a leader in the world in the 21st century?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And look, if you go on Jeb2016.com website, and you'll see the most detailed, forward-leaning future plans that any president's laid out, whether it's tax policy or regulatory policy, immigration policy. I wrote a book about it that's forward-leaning. Across the spectrum, if you look at the policies that we've laid out, you're going to get a sense that this is about the future, not the past, in my campaign. Here's the deal. We've had a president who was gifted. He's gifted. I mean, I'm envious of how good of a speech he can give. He's very eloquent, and it's very powerful. But there was nothing in his background that would suggest that he could lead. There was nothing that suggested, well, he did this, this, and this, and therefore he can take complex problems, bring people together, fix them, stick with it, create a strategy to improve on it and build on it and build on it, which is what leadership is all about. I have those proven skills. My campaign is about the future, but I have proven skills that people can take to the bank, that I have the skills to transform, to disrupt, to create a strategy, to transform, to stick with it, to be passionate and totally committed to fighting for the people that right now are stuck. And I think when you get closer and closer to this, it's going to matter. That experience matters. That commitment on behalf of people matters. And lofty platitudes are not going to be as relevant as direct, sincere plans and the heart to be able to fix things and the leadership skills that are proven. So I'm a friend of Marco's. I'm a huge fan of his. I got to work with him. He got to work with me. Maybe that's the better way of saying it. When I was governor, he's an incredible talent. But we're in times right now that I think requires leadership, and that's my case. And I'm going to stick with it. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to run hard. And I appreciate if anybody is excited about this.
And it looks like that's where our Jeb Bush speech cuts off. You know, sometimes I don't get the speech in its entirety due to Fox or satellite, so I apologize on behalf of the world. I apologize. Let's cut into Marco Rubio. Let's see here. Here he is. There you are, Marco Rubio, who Jeb Bush was just talking about.
We will simplify the tax code. We will have the most pro-growth tax code in the world. We need to bring regulations under control. It's completely out of control. Now look, there's a role for regulation, right? I flew here on an airplane today, JetBlue. You heard about it. I fly them all, but JetBlue has TV sets, so it's good. Didn't have the NFL Network today. I don't know what I had to. Anyway, I'm glad that plane is regulated. I want to make sure the landing gear works, right? That the wings aren't going to fall off. Well, there's a role. What happens when regulations go too far, when they go beyond that? That's where we're at now. It's gone too far. You have unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats that sit behind their desk all day and write millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars of regulations, and it goes back to the same argument. These big businesses, these large industries, they can deal with all this stuff. They may not like it, they can deal with it. They hire lobbyists to draw up the loopholes. They hire lawyers to exploit the loopholes, and they get around it. Sometimes these big businesses are for the regulations because it keeps the small business from competing against them. That's why we need a regulatory budget. And you know what that means? That means we set a hard cap on how much regulations can cost our economy. And when I'm president, we will bring regulations down and we will hold the line on them. We will not allow them to continue to grow this way. We want to be globally competitive. Here's another thing we're going to have to do. We have to balance our budget. No one talks about this anymore. No one talks about this anymore. We have a $19 trillion debt. A $19 trillion debt. That's as larger than the size of our overall economy. We are going to have a debt crisis in this country at some point. We are going to have a debt crisis. We have to balance that budget. And the only way to do it is the combination of rapid economic growth and spending reforms. Now, what are the spending reforms? Well, first, we have to look at what's driving the debt. And the long-term debt is driven by future spending in the out years on some very important programs. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and also the servicing of the debt. Now, I'm from Florida. A lot of people don't know this, what I'm about to tell you. There are a lot of people in Florida on Medicare and Social Security. There are. One of them is my mother. So I'll tell you right now, the press is here, so I want this in the papers tomorrow. I am against anything that's bad for my mother. And here's the great news. We can balance our budget. We can save Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and we don't have to change a thing for her, or people that are retired already, or people that are about to retire over the next 10 years. But here's the truth, and someone needs to start saying it. My Medicare, I'm 44. I feel 45, but I'm 44. Probably feel 55 by the time they're done with me on this thing. But my Medicare and Social Security is going to be different than my parents'. It either will not exist or it will be different. It'll still be the best thing in the world, the best retirement program, the best retirement health care program in the world, but it's going to work a little different than it did for my parents. I may have to retire a year later than my parents did. If I'm financially successful, my Social Security benefits may not grow as fast as they grew for my parents. My Medicare benefits might be the opportunity to take my money and use it to buy a private plan that I like better, like Medicare Advantage. These are not unreasonable things to ask of me, someone who's 20 years away from retirement, after everything my parents and my grandparents did for me and for us and for this country. And if we do that, and we have 20 years to plan, it isn't fair to ask someone who's already retired. My mom can't afford to change now. But I can plan for that, and people younger than me can plan for that. And if we can do that, we can save these important programs, and we can balance our budget, and we don't have to change anything for the people that are on it now. And anyone who says otherwise is not being honest. They're not saying the truth. And the longer we wait to deal with this, the harder it's going to be to deal with. It is the most predictable crisis we have ever had in this nation's history. And the sooner we deal with it, the better it's going to be to deal with it. The easier it's going to be to deal with it. It's not going to be easy, but the easier it's going to be to deal with. We have to fully utilize our energy resources if we want to be globally competitive. We've been blessed with an abundance of oil and natural gas. Now, I want to lead the world in everything. I want to lead the world in solar. I want to lead the world in wind and in renewables and in biofuels. But we're crazy if we don't fully utilize the oil and natural gas we've been blessed with. You know that we're not allowed to sell American oil abroad? Which makes no sense. We have more than enough for ourselves and then others. Think about this. We can now go to the world and say, why are you buying your oil from a radical Shia cleric in Iran? Why are you buying your oil from a gangster in Moscow? Buy it from us. From the greatest nation on earth, from the most reliable nation on earth. And if we do that, not only will we change the world geopolitically, we will create hundreds of thousands of jobs for Americans in the energy sector. We have an abundance of natural gas that we should be fully utilizing. Do you know what that means? It means two things. Number one, it means it's going to be cheaper to live in America. The cost of cooking your food or heating your home is going to be cheaper. You know who that matters to? A struggling family. A single mother who's struggling to provide for her children on $10 an hour, and I'll address that in a moment too. If we can hold the line on utility rates, how much more affordable will life be in America? But you know what else that will do? It will create a manufacturing renaissance. Because if we can lower and stabilize the cost of powering a manufacturing plant, we will have a manufacturing renaissance in America, and we can once again become a country that makes things again. One more thing. There's other things, but I can't go through it all, but one more thing we have to do to become globally competitive. We must repeal and replace Obamacare. Now, health insurance is a legitimate issue. It really is. And we have to address it. But the way it's being addressed right now doesn't work. It has raised the prices, lowered the coverage, and it's costing people their jobs and their hours at work. A better approach is to put everyone in charge of their own health care spending. Here's what that means. It means you are in charge of your own pre-tax money. And you can use it, whether it's a tax credit, whether it's from your employer that gives you the money every month to buy health insurance, or whether it's your own money because you make a lot of money. Whatever it may be, you can use it to buy health insurance of the kind you want. Not everybody needs the same health insurance. My brother-in-law, my wife's brother, he's 29 years old, he's single, he's healthy, he thinks he's never going to die. He needs a catastrophic hospitalization plan and a health savings account on the front end. I'm a married father of 4. I need more comprehensive coverage. We should be able to choose the coverage we want from any company in any state in America that will sell it to us. And if anybody doubts that works, then turn your TV on tonight. I promise you, if you watch long enough, you're going to see a commercial for Geico, State Farm, Prudential, Allstate, The General, Progressive. Who am I missing? Who? Liberty Mutual, right. Why are they all advertising? Aflac? How can I forget Aflac? My point is, why are they all advertising? They're competing against each other for your business. How do they compete? By lowering prices and improving quality. And why do they compete? Because who controls your auto insurance money? Does your boss control it? No. Does the government? No, you do. And that's what will happen in health insurance if you control your health care spending. Companies will create better insurance at a better price to compete for your business. And that's a lot better than what we have right now. So, I'm telling you that if we can do these and a few more things, we're not just going to have an economic recovery, we're going to have an economic renaissance. Because this 21st century economy is tailor-made for this country. This 21st century economy is about innovation. We are the most innovative people in the world. This 21st century economy is about productivity. We are the most productive people in the world. And if we give our private sector the chance to do it, they will create not just millions of new jobs, but millions of jobs that pay a lot more than the jobs we have right now. We need a government that will do that as president I will. Which leads me to my third point. Those new jobs are going to require different skills than the ones people have today. These new jobs all require a higher level of education or a higher level of training. The problem is we have a completely outdated higher education system. Completely outdated. Let me give you one example. Some of the best jobs of the 21st century, some of the fastest growing jobs of the 21st century require more than traditional high school, but less than 4 years of college. But somehow we stopped training people to do this. Somehow at some point we told people, well, trade schools are for the kids that can't get into college. Trade schools are for the people who want to find a job. I promise you this, a welder makes a lot more money than a philosopher. Believe it or not, people get upset. I'm a philosopher. I said, well, what's your job? The market has tightened over the last 2,000 years for philosophers. And so that's we don't train enough people to be welders, plumbers, pipe fitters, machinists. These are good paying jobs. And let me tell you what else. We can train people to do that when they're 16, 17, and 18 years of age. I support opening up federal financial aid so kids could start dual enrolling younger. So when they're 16 or 17, they've decided, I'm fixing airplanes for a living. They can go to high school in the morning, they can go to trade school in the afternoon, and when they graduate, they don't just have a high school diploma, they have a job. A job that can pay $40,000, $50,000 at 18 years of age. We need to do more of that. If I'm president, I will be the vocational education president. We need to provide flexibility in higher education for non-traditional students. So think of this example. I actually know people like this, a lot of people like this. Think of a single mother, makes $10 an hour, abandoned by the father of her children. She struggles to provide for her 2 or 3 kids, makes $10 or $11 an hour. The only way she's ever going to get a raise is if she can go back to school and acquire some education that allows her to go from being a receptionist to a paralegal, from being a home health aide at $9 an hour to a dental hygienist. But she can't go back to school, because to go back to school, she'd have to quit her job and who's going to watch the kids? But imagine if there was another way to acquire your learning, a way that said, we're going to give you credit for what you already know. It doesn't matter where you learned it. If you know it already, we're not going to make you pay to take classes in it. Maybe you acquired that experience working, or in the military, or through life experience, or through internships. We will give you credit for what you already know. And then whatever you're missing, you can learn that from a variety of sources. Free online coursework, weekend classes at the community college, evening classes at the adult education center. You can package all of that learning into the equivalent of a degree, and suddenly millions of Americans who are trapped in low-paying jobs can acquire the skills for the higher-paying jobs that a new and vibrant economy will create. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to have 4-year schools. We are. Otherwise, how would we have college football? We have to have 4-year schools. But we can't afford to allow Americans to continue to borrow thousands of dollars for degrees that do not lead to jobs. I feel very strong about this. I feel particularly strong about this because I owed student loans. I owed over $100,000 in student loans. When I became a senator, I still owed over $100,000 in student loans. In fact, I didn't pay off the student loans until I wrote a book.
Sorry for the technical difficulties. I greatly apologize. Let's see if we can get this back.
He had big dreams because young people have big dreams. But his became impossible. And so when my parents came to America, they found a new dream. And the new dream they found was all the things that they could never do, their children were going to be able to do. All the doors that had closed for them, all the opportunities they never had, their children would. That became the very purpose of their lives. That's why they worked as a bartender. That's why my mother worked at a factory building aluminum chairs, as a cashier on Miami Beach, as a maid at the Imperial Palace, as a stock clerk at Kmart. My parents worked so that all the things they could never have, we would have the chance to do. That's why my father stood behind a small portable bar in the back of a banquet hall for all those years. So one day I could be anything I wanted, even aspire to the highest office in the land. The journey from behind that bar to the life I have today, that's the essence of the American dream. That's what makes America special and different. And that's actually what unifies us as one people. Because the story I just told you is not just mine. It's also yours. In this country, we are all but a generation removed from someone who did that for us. In this nation, we are all but 1 or 2 generations removed from someone who made our future the very purpose of their lives. You know this because you remember your parents. You remember your mother and father and what they did for you, your grandparents, and maybe it was you. People who worked 2 jobs, who maybe went to bed hungry, who sacrificed their own dreams so that you could have the life they never did. This is what unifies us as one people. And if we ever stop being that kind of country, we'll no longer be special. But here's the good news of our time. If we do what needs to be done, not only will that dream survive, that dream is going to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. And whether or not America remains a special country, more than anything else, will be decided by whether or not people can do for their children what my parents did for me and what your parents did for you. And this is what we fight for. This is why I'm running for president. Because I want America to still be that kind of country, and it can be. In fact, it can be that kind of country for more people than it's ever been before. We won't just save the American dream, we will expand it to reach more people and change more lives than it has ever done. And if we achieve this, here's what history will say about us. It will say that we lived in the early years of this new century in a rapidly changing and uncertain time. But we did not allow these challenges. We did not allow these challenges to allow us to abandon the principles of our founding or the essence of our nation. Like the Americans that came before us, history will say, we confronted our challenges and we solved them. And we embraced our opportunities. And because we did, the American dream survived for at least one more generation to inherit. Because we did, the 21st century was also a new American century. I need your help to make this happen. We want to do very well here in Nevada. And that's why I'm here today, to hopefully earn your support and encourage you to attract more people to our cause. Because if we can do this together, then we will leave our children better off than ourselves. In fact, we will leave our children and our grandchildren as the freest and the most prosperous Americans that have ever lived. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you.
Look at how eager these people are to talk to him. Oh, they all want to shake his hand and want photos. Lowering the volume here in case that's top 40, although I don't recognize the song. And do you mind if I interrupt? Do you mind if I take cut out of that screen? I hope you don't. Hi. What a politically filled evening we had. Unfortunately, no car chases, or I know that that's what you guys are really into, so I apologize that we didn't have any of those. And that's typically how we like to start off the evening show, straight to a car chase. But we had a lot of good content this evening. Marco Rubio's speech sounded a lot like last night's speech, which is something that Trump had mentioned at the very beginning when he was talking about how he's constantly live, and whenever he speaks, it's constantly taken live. Not as much as it used to be. Whenever Trump would speak, I used to look up at the newsroom televisions and see him on every major network. Not so much anymore. I don't know if his numbers have lowered that much, or if the media just determined that they weren't going to give him that much power, because he's also spoken about how you're required, I believe, to give everyone a fair shot in regards to coverage. But he mentioned that there are so many live outlets that cover him that he has to change up his speeches. But it didn't seem today like his speech was that much different than other speeches he's given. But he said, I'm required to change my speeches because everybody else is using the same speeches, but I'm taking live. I will give it to him there that Marco's speech sounded a lot like last night's speech. Specifically, when he joked about his mom, which is a cute joke. And he also says, I've noticed almost every time he speaks, I'm 44, but I feel 45. Okay. I'm dirty 30, but I feel 15, but I don't say that all the time. Ale says, I look like I am in a biker gang. Fox News Now outlaws. It gets really cold in the newsroom. I apologize. And this is just my favorite jacket. I love wearing moto jackets. They're my favorite. And this is one of my favorite jackets. Interesting. Belle in the chat room says, I'd like to look into the candidate's eyes just once. Aw, thank you, D. So sweet. Hey, it's 9:01. Do you know what that means? In just one more minute, Fox 10 News at 9 is going to be on your television screen. If you are local, you can head over to Channel 10. If you're not local, go to fox10phoenix.com/live, and you can watch our local television broadcast. Oh, I see it on our local television broadcast from wherever you are. Oh. And we got some interesting stories tonight. As I stare. Sex offenders. A guy that would use obituaries to rob people. A lot of weird stuff going on. Yes. All right. So head over to fox10phoenix.com/live and watch our live broadcast. Troy Hayden, John Hook. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. It's 9 o'clock, so I'm going to let you go. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow afternoon. Thank you so much for spending your night with me. I'm Kinsey Schofield. Goodbye. Oh, I don't like looking at myself on camera. It's hideous. It's so unfortunate. Thank you, Eduardo.